Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
So, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas threatens this week that, ready for this quote, millions of fighters would swarm Jerusalem and topple the Jewish state capital, warning that, quote, this is, again, a quote from him, no matter how many houses and how many settlements they declare that they will plan to build here and there, is what he says, they shall all be destroyed. This is what Abbas said. So this is the partner for peace, Mahmoud Abbas. Let me say it again. Millions of fighters would swarm Jerusalem and topple the Jewish state's capital city, warning that no matter how many houses and how many settlements they declare that they plan to build, they shall all be destroyed. He also said in Arabic at a refugee camp near Ramallah that was heavy with threats of destruction, doubled down on the Palestinian government's policy of using public money to pay convicted terrorists and their families, telling his audience, we will not accept their designation of our martyrs as terrorists. Our martyrs are the martyrs of the homeland. These martyrs, as they call them, which are really terrorists, actually kill Israeli civilians. In fact, they've killed American civilian students who have been over in Israel. One I remember most recently from Vanderbilt University.
Yeah,
so which
created a U.S. law, Taylor Force Act, which has been adopted by Congress. This is the follow-up to that quote, continues by Mahmoud Abbas. We will not allow them to deduct a single penny from their money. All the money will go back to them because the martyrs, the wounded, and the prisoners are the most sacred things we have. Remember, we call this pay to slay program. And these terrorists, whether they are 18-year-old girls like we talked about, that the group that was sponsoring Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib's trip to Israel, that got canceled, that group was praising as a part of the resistance. Whether it's an 18-year-old girl, a 40-year-old father, the money, they tell these families, hey, you'll get $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 if you carry out these attacks on civilians.
Now, by the way, when we talk about this pay to slay issue, it's this idea that they pay money to the terrorist families after they've committed an atrocity against innocent civilians. They then, and let's say they're killed in the action because the Israeli Defense Forces take them out. What happens then, and this is important to understand, is the Palestinian Authority pays those families it's usually about $20,000 a year. Yeah. Now, let me tell you what's interesting about that. Where's that money coming from? Ask yourself that. It's coming from outside governmental money. It could be coming from U.S. dollars for all we know. I mean, this is, obviously not authorized, but that's what they do. So you've got this culture that they have there. And meanwhile, the pressure is, can we get a peace plan? Are you going to get a peace plan with a group that's trying to tell you that they're going to basically destroy Jerusalem? Or is it time for there to be a change in the leadership within the Palestinian Authority? And I think that is what the Palestinian people are coming to recognize, as a poll recently showed that the president's peace plan is getting good support in the Palestinian Authority. Why? Because they know that their existing leadership continues to put on a ruinous path. We've got a lot more to discuss on the issue of Israel. It's a front and center issue for us. We have that office in Jerusalem. We're going to come back from the break. We're going to take calls. We're going to take comments. We're going to get into an analysis of what it means when the Palestinian Authority leadership starts talking about taking over Jerusalem. Does not sound like peace talk. There is a petition of support for the ACLJ for our work in Jerusalem. You could do that by going to aclj.org. That's aclj.org. Back with more in a moment.
Israel is under constant deadly terrorist knife and rocket attacks. Jewish students, professors, and Christians who support Israel face vicious discrimination at U.S. universities, all in an attempt to delegitimize the state of Israel. Israel is our ally. The Jewish people are friends. It's our duty to defend them. That's why the ACLJ is launching a massive new multinational legal campaign in defense of Israel, in the U.S., at the UN, and with world leaders. But we need these global leaders to hear from you now. Add your name to our new petition. Petition to defend Israel from anti-Israel attacks across the globe. Call now 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or you can add your name online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Jordan Sekulow. We're taking your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. If someone rises up to kill you, kill him first. Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in response. Of course, unlike the Muslim world and the extremist world, he's not just like making that comment as a provocative comment that you might hear in mosque, or you might hear by someone like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, I will destroy you, or may Allah destroy you. Now, he was in response to Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, saying, we will not accept their designation of our martyrs as terrorists. Now, these are specific designations of not soldiers as terrorists, but suicide bombers, people who take knives out and start randomly stabbing people in the street, people who take a bulldozer and run down people in the street. To him, that's not terrorism. Those are martyrs. And we will not allow them to deduct a single penny from their money. So we're going to continue to take the resources of the Palestinian people and give them to these quote-unquote martyr terrorists. Pay for slay. We've talked about the Taylor Force Act a number of times in this broadcast before. Finally, the U.S. government has done something about this. All the money will go back to them because the martyrs and the wounded and the prisoners are the most sacred things we have. You're in a real trouble as a territory, as a nation, as a people. If the most sacred thing you have, you see how religion's not really part of this. You know, they throw around Allah this and Allah that, but it's not really religious at all. The most sacred thing the people have is 20-year-old girls who will strap bombs to themselves, fathers who will take a bulldozer and run over Israeli kids in the street, bus drivers who will kill an entire classroom of Israeli kids. That's your most sacred thing as a nation, then you're doomed. You're doomed as a people. You're doomed as a society and as a culture because that's not acceptable. It never has been acceptable. And Than, that is why the U.S. finally took action through what is called the Taylor Force Act. And I want to remind people this happened under the Trump administration, obviously through Congress, but under the Trump administration.
Yeah, just last year, Jordan, if it wouldn't have been for the Trump administration insisting on it and demonstrating a willingness to sign it, it wouldn't have happened. And just very succinctly, it's a legislative prohibition from U.S. taxpayers' dollars going to the Palestinian Authority unless they certify that they are not doing pay for slay, which, as you've outlined, Jordan, is compensating those who commit terrorist acts against Israeli citizens or, frankly, against any citizens. But that is essentially what they had been doing for a number of times. And, Jordan, much like other entities that get U.S. taxpayer dollars, it was simply a shell game. At times, they would say U.S. dollars were not being used for this purpose, and they would use other dollars. Of course, our dollars would free it up. But, Jordan, at other times, they would actually brag about the fact that the number of dollars available for the Pay for Slay program was directly proportional to the dollars they got from the United States, and they would raise it or lower it based on that amount. That is now no longer the case. Both the House and the Senate passed a statutory prohibition against those dollars flowing until the program was ended. President Trump signed it. Of course, the Palestinian Authority has done anything but certify that the program is ended. They have actually doubled down, saying they're going to continue on it. As a result, U.S. taxpayer dollars will no longer flow to them in that amount.
All right, folks, we're going to continue to take your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. We want to talk to you on the air, 1-800-684-3110. Do you agree with the Trump administration's approach? Listen, you work on the peace plan, you work on a deal. At the same time, you have to realize who is going to be sitting across the table, who you're trying to broker this with. And if, as of this weekend, if that person is saying that we will not accept your designation of our martyrs as terrorists, or that we are going to overrun your capital, that's very dangerous. I mean, dangerous to say the least. We wouldn't accept that in the U.S. In the U.S., we wouldn't even be putting together a peace plan with a group like this. We'd be saying, how do we destroy them? But in the Middle East, things are a bit different, and you have to deal with the realities on the ground. But could you imagine if in Mexico or Canada, the leader was saying things like, millions of fighters will swarm Washington, D.C. and topple America's capital, warning that no matter how many houses and how many settlements they declare they plan to build here and there, they shall all be destroyed. We wouldn't accept that from Mexico or Canada, and we certainly wouldn't work with them on trade. We would put walls and barriers up. We would have to. We would not have direct relations. It would be very difficult to travel between the two places. This is exactly the reality of Israel. It's why there are some walls there. It's why travel is a bit more difficult, because the people on the literally bordering you are saying, we want to run over your city and destroy everything you've built. And if you're more powerful at that point in time, you're going to do everything you can to stop those crazy people from doing that. And that's what Israel's doing. But you have to have strong U.S. leadership. I think this is going to be key in 2020. Yes. You have to have very strong U.S. leadership to deal with the Middle East in this time. I do think what helps is that the Trump administration has built excellent relationships with the rest of the Muslim world. So you're seeing no pressure from Saudis,
no, I think
from
that's
Qataris,
been the key.
From others saying,
stakeholder
help
buy-in.
the Palestinians. The Egyptians are with us. The Jordanians are with us.
Egyptians, Saudis.
You go around, and Syria is a failed state. I think
that's been one of the great successes. Is having the buy-in from the Muslim, the Arab world. All right, let's.
Can I just say, the president gets called Islamophobic last week by Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. He has golf courses in majority Muslim countries who said, yes, you can go ahead. They did the deal. This is not someone Islamophobic. He's just not afraid to call out terrorism, what terrorism is.
Right.
Islamic extremism, what Islamic extremism is.
Our relationship with the Arab world is, I think, the best it's been. I'll get everybody's opinion on this, but I think our relationship with the Islamic world is the best that it's been. I'm going to go to each person. Wes?
Absolutely it is. And the Islamic world has wised up to the Palestinian leadership and their backing by Iran, which is a threat to peace throughout the regions, and they have really allied with Western forces because of the threat that they present.
Harry, I think the strength that we projected has helped the relationship.
Absolutely. So basically, we have strengthened our relationship both with Israel and with moderate Arab leaders in the Middle East. And this is putting massive pressure on the Palestinian Authority leaders as well as the leaders in Gaza. Those two groups are a clear and present danger to peace, and they are a clear and present danger to the lives of the Palestinian people. And I believe that the Palestinian people crave peace. There's an opportunity for peace, but there needs to be a move to remove these leaders, including Abbas, who wants to unleash millions of fighters to swarm Jerusalem, who wants to continue to pay terrorists and call them martyrs. These acts are not the acts of an individual who wants peace. These are the acts of an individual who wants to receive increasing amounts of money, billions of dollars, so he and his friends can deposit it in Western banks and ignore the plight of the Palestinian people.
Western banks, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. Let's go. Let me ask you, Skip. Now, Skip, you know this region well. You've been there a lot, as I have. As most of us have. I would say that this is our best relationship with Israel, but also with the neighboring Arab states in our lifetime.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the moderate Sunni powers have finally realized that radical Muslims are a greater danger to them than the Israelis. And that's finally come home to them, and they realize that it's the radical Muslims who are stirring up the Muslim street, trying to destabilize the entire Middle East. So they have a stake in moderating that and in bringing more moderation to the entire region.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Than, from a Washington, D.C. perspective in Congress. You're not hearing a lot out of the Democrats, at least in the debates right now, about this issue of Israel, because I shudder to think what some of their responses will be.
And I think that's a problem, actually, because when you have members inside their caucus who are actually attacking the underpinning of the alliance that has allowed the relationship with the Arab world that you're talking about, Jay, and I would really make that case. The intel sharing that we have with Israel, certainly it allows for a targeting identification of those who are inclined to terrorism. Jay, it also exonerates those who are not. So I think that has fostered the good relationship with the Arab world. But the fact that that you have members inside that caucus calling for a defunding of Israel, a tearing down of that alliance between the United States. I think those members who are running for president, and certainly the leadership inside both chambers, Jay, they should be a lot louder about it, because those members of their caucus need to be called out for it.
All right. We appreciate your support of the American Center for Law and Justice. A great way to do that is just go to aclj.org. You can support the work of the ACLJ easily that way with an online contribution. Also, sign that petition standing with Israel. Hundreds of thousands of you have. It makes a big difference as we go to the UN, as we talked about on this broadcast this week. We're at the United Nations defending Israel, in court defending Israel as well. ACLJ.org.
Israel is under constant deadly terrorist knife and rocket attacks. Jewish students, professors, and Christians who support Israel face vicious discrimination at U.S. universities, all in an attempt to delegitimize the state of Israel. Israel is our ally. The Jewish people are friends. It's our duty to defend them. That's why the ACLJ is launching a massive new multinational legal campaign in defense of Israel, in the U.S., at the UN, and with world leaders. But we need these global leaders to hear from you now. Add your name to our new petition, a petition to defend Israel from anti-Israel attacks across the globe. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or you can add your name online, aclj.org.
As I mentioned, at the American Center for Law and Justice, we have a full functioning office in Jerusalem. Your support of the ACLJ makes a big difference to that office. Take a look.
Israel has long supported a two-state solution with Palestinians. The other side, however, has consistently rejected peace. Here's how. Britain took control of the Middle East in 1917 after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. In the years that followed, Palestinian Arabs waged a nationalist uprising. In response to the unrest, Britain formed the Peel Commission and proposed a two-state solution so that Arabs and Jews could peacefully govern their respective lands. The Arabs rejected this. In 1947, the United Nations pressed forward and voted in favor of a two-state solution. The Arabs rejected this as well. In the subsequent year, Israel officially proclaimed itself a state. Furious, the Arabs enlisted help from Jordanian, Syrian, Iraqi, and Egyptian forces and engaged in war with Israel. The Arabs failed. The land that had been slated for the Palestinians was now occupied by Jordan. Today, this region is known as the West Bank and East Jerusalem. In 1967, the Arabs waged yet another war on Israel. After 6 days, it ended with Israel controlling the West Bank. The Arab League met after the war and declared, no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiations with Israel. It's a chilling resolve that echoes even to this day. In 2000, then President Clinton met with both the Israeli Prime Minister and the Palestinian Liberation Organization chairman in hopes of resuming peace talks. The Israeli Prime Minister offered up all of Gaza, 94% of the West Bank and East Jerusalem as the capital of a new Palestinian state. The offer was rejected, yet Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza. In the subsequent years, the Arabs continued to wreak havoc on Israel with suicide bombers on buses, in wedding halls, and in public squares. Thousands of innocent Israelis have lost their lives. In 2008, Israel once again proposed a two-state solution to the newly appointed president of the Palestinian Authority. Palestinians rejected the offer. Now Gaza is a hotbed for Hamas and is used by Palestinians to launch deadly rockets into Israel. Time and time again, Palestinians have sent a clear message. It has no desire to make peace with the state of Israel, even though Israel remains committed to a peaceful two-state solution.
The Palestinian Authority is a bit of a misnomer, and that is people will say, well, can't we have two sides sit down and negotiate peace?
people want to avoid war. They want to avoid conflict. Can't you just have two sides come down and negotiate peace? The problem is in the Middle East, specifically within the situation with the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority, again, you better think nine-dimensionally because there's not just two sides there. David?
Of course, well, if you take the Palestinian arena, you could theoretically sit down with the moderate Palestinians and work out some kind of agreement. But even if you succeed in doing that, there'll be a very large number of people, who will do everything they can to derail that agreement. I mean, we've seen it before. We've actually seen how any progress on an agreement automatically brings about a spike in terror attacks. And of course, Hamas have wasted no time in saying that their aim remains to wipe out the state of Israel. Even that doesn't fit in with what the Palestinian Authority is supposed to be saying.
And how do you negotiate with an adversary who's still calling for your destruction?
And has no authority, puts that in the title. Even the title itself is misleading. If you think about a Palestinian Authority, you would think someone who has the authority to speak on behalf of a group or govern a group, but when in fact they don't. They barely govern a half of their territory. And even under that, you can make an argument that without the United States or Israel, that authority would no longer exist either. It would be overrun by more extreme terrorist groups.
I think we also have to be careful not to give too much credit to the quote-unquote moderate Palestinians. Remember, these are the same people who literally glorify and incentivize terrorists.
They pay them. They pay the terrorist families to kill Jews.
And they don't hide it. It's literally published in their budget.
The notion of moderate versus extreme is at least the extreme guys tell the truth. Hamas guys say, yeah, we want to destroy you. We want to destroy Israel. We want to destroy America. The so-called moderates, they lie to us sometimes, but they've never departed from their ultimate goal of destroying Israel.
So we've discussed the issue of negotiating with the Palestinian Authority when they're not really an authority. But then we need to talk about the Palestinians as a people, because there's this call for two-state solutions. But you have to ask yourself this question. I ask myself this question. I'm sure our audience is thinking the same thing. Why have not the Arab neighbors, world, so to speak, rallied to the Palestinian cause, not from an incitement standpoint of getting them to conduct an intifada, but absorbing them within their own culture? Why the hesitation?
Well, they've wanted to keep the conflict alive.
Now for 60 or 70 years, yes.
The fact is, there have been so many conflicts in history. Just in this century, the last century alone, there have been millions of refugees of all sorts from all sorts of conflicts. All those refugees are now no longer refugees. But the Palestinians are refugees since 1948. And that situation is being perpetuated, of course, by the fact that you have one UN agency which is devoted entirely to dealing with Palestinians, and one other UN agency for refugees which deals with all the other refugees in the world. It's a self-perpetuating situation perpetuated by the UN and also by these countries who've wanted to keep this wound open for so long.
So their own people group will not absorb them.
Yeah, look, it's extraordinary, Jay. I mean, at the same time that this happened, the creation of the State of Israel, there were a lot of nation states were being created in the Middle East. Meanwhile, about 800,000 Jews who had been in the Middle East for centuries, for millennia, were thrown out, chased out, hounded out of the Middle Eastern countries and found refuge in Israel, which absorbed them. A tiny little country absorbed them and built. And by the way, took care of its own minority. There is not a country in the region that treats Arabs or Muslims better than Israel does. Right? And so they absorbed the Jews, they took care of Arabs and Muslims within their borders, and yet the notion of it's not that the Palestinian situation is being perpetuated, it was created in order to destroy Israel. Before there was a Palestinian flag before the State of Israel. It was a Jewish star on a field of blue and white, because there was never a separate concept of an Arab entity called Palestinians. There was never a Palestine. The entire conception of this is to destroy Israel by turning Israel into an oppressor and using all these different instrumentalities, not just warfare on the battlefield, but lawfare, going into the courts of public opinion and turning Israel into an oppressor, turning this into a human rights issue, and it's all a creation in order to demonize and ultimately destroy the State of Israel.
But you have a situation where the populace within the region is producing the conflict for their own purposes.
Sometimes there has to be winners and losers in conflicts. And this is one where it's like the world won't accept who lost. And the Arab countries won't accept who lost. And so they lost what can be an offensive war, defensive. It doesn't really matter at this point. You've got to kind of take that next step in this. But the idea of pushing that you must negotiate, what are you negotiating at this point?
And with whom are you negotiating?
And who has actually got the power to speak on your behalf? If the Saudi king can't speak on the behalf, the king of Jordan can't speak on your behalf, and the military general in Egypt can't speak on your behalf, and there's no Lebanese government anymore, then who is speaking on the behalf? Is it the head of Hamas? Is it the head of Hezbollah? Is it an Ayatollah? Or are these individual terror groups? And so it's the idea of the winners and losers too. I think that the world doesn't like to accept anymore, and the UN doesn't like to accept.
Well, the UN's been no question the UN's been a problem point. I mean, we've made multiple appearances at the UN. Our team has made multiple interventions at the United Nations. I've spoken before the General Assembly of the United States in the General Assembly Hall. But the fact is, it's negotiating with a phantom. I mean, you're negotiating with an entity, Mark, that has no authority to negotiate a compromise. And legally, I mean, we always say, it's offer, acceptance. The party that you want to accept, if you gave them everything, still doesn't have the authority to accept. If you gave them everything.
It's not even if. We've already done it. If you look at John Kerry's speech from last year, this is what a plan has to look like. Those were the Clinton peace parameters. That was Ehud Olmert's plan in 2008, and that's kind of what Netanyahu agreed to in 2014. Literally every piece we've said, all right, take it, but they can't say yes because then the conflict is over and their reason for existence is gone.
And this is where you take these battles, whether it's in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., the International Criminal Court in The Hague, or actually right to the hall of the General Assembly at the United Nations.
We are in federal court defending the state of Israel. We are in the United Nations raising those issues, as Stan said, with a team of 5. So that's happening right now. Your support for the ACLJ makes that possible, in addition to our office in Jerusalem. We can't do it without you. That's going to do it for the broadcast this week. Let me encourage you to sign on to that petition in support of Israel. And I'm talking about support. Support the work of the ACLJ. You could do that at aclj.org. Sign up for our Facebook feeds, Twitter, Periscope. Very, very important. aclj.org. That's aclj.org.
Israel is under constant deadly terrorist knife and rocket attacks. Jewish students, professors, and Christians who support Israel face vicious discrimination at U.S. universities, all in an attempt to delegitimize the state of Israel. Israel is our ally, the Jewish people our friends. It's our duty to defend them. That's why the ACLJ is launching a massive new multinational legal campaign in defense of Israel, in the U.S., at the UN, and with world leaders. But we need these global leaders to hear from you now. Add your name to our new petition, a petition to defend Israel from anti-Israel attacks across the globe. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or you can add your name online, aclj.org.